voters will be heading to cast their ballots this November 3rd all across the country. Some may even choose to utilize mail-in ballots, but there could be some more restrictions pending possible outcomes in the courts. Democratic attorneys general from 22 different states and California and the District of Columbia, they filed a lawsuit this morning against the U.S. Postal Service over its rule on mail-in ballots. Now, President Donald Trump gave an executive order back in March directing the U.S. Department of Homeland Security to curate lists with names of all citizens at least 18 years old in each state who are eligible to vote. The order also requires the U.S. Postal Service to check the lists before sending out mail-in ballots. Now, on Monday, the U.S. Supreme Court said it would, for now, allow that Trump order to maintain. Now, in a press release, California Governor Gavin Newsom warned this could disenfranchise voters all across the country and said they'll bring another lawsuit and try to block that order, calling the order Orwellian. Meanwhile, Newsom said California is advancing an election protection package to establish new felonies and misdemeanors for seizing election material or interfering with mail-in ballot delivery. The Trump administration not fazed by Newsom's comments. White House spokeswoman Laura Biss told the Center Square via email, quote, "The Supreme Court ruling was a major win for the security of American elections. Radical Democrats continue to oppose common sense measures that protect the security of mail-in ballots and ensure only Americans are electing American leaders." Biss added that the Trump administration will continue to lawfully enact the agenda President Trump was elected on, which includes the safety and security of our elections. Now, joining us to talk about the impacts of the order and the attempts to block it is Marley Hornick, founder of RealAmerica.vote. Marley, thanks for taking time with us here on The States. Your thoughts on where we stand on this current issue of mail-in balloting?
Well, thanks, Greg. The Supreme Court decision couldn't be more favorable at this time, and that's because of the short amount of time before the midterm election takes place, and especially the short amount of time before states start sending mail-in ballots out for return. So what the Supreme Court functionally said is that these cases that the states have filed saying that the administration has overstepped its legal boundaries into election administration have to be adjudicated. The courts have to hear these matters. They have to be tried. There has to be evidence on both sides, and they have to make a decision before the Supreme Court will say that the order has to be enjoined. That means that it's basically going to be in place. It's going to be standing law for the midterm, which is great news for election validity.
What about this lawsuit that was literally filed this morning by a whole bunch of states going after this particular order? You think that's going to limit the president's order on mail-in voting?
I don't think it's going to have time, Greg, because even though they filed it this morning, we're literally weeks away from Virginia, which has 45 days of early voting, starting to mail out their mail-in ballots. So they can sue the United States Postal Service for the recommendations the Postal Service has adopted, but it's really the president's executive order. Now, one of the things that's so important about this executive order, where the states are going to struggle very hard to create these legal anchors they claim, is that it never leaves the executive agencies. It never leaves Article 2 of the United States Constitution. So it's very questionable whether or not the states have any authority over this executive order. It's simply a directive from the president to one of his executive agencies about how to handle ballots for federal elections. So, there's a lot of propaganda out there from the state saying the federal government is trying to interfere in state elections. And yet that's not true. The federal government is securing federal elections in a situation where the states have refused to allow the federal government oversight into the voter rolls that conduct federal elections. It's a crazy battle, but the administration is right.
Marley, I want to get your reaction to some of the leaders in the Democratic Party, governors from New York and Illinois. Here's what New York Governor Kathy Hochul had to say about this particular issue concerning mail-in voting yesterday.
I am very concerned about this. This is just another tactic from individuals who see the writing on the wall, that Americans have had it with their policies of harm, of hurting them, making life more expensive, making us less safe in the world. And they're going to show how they feel about this administration when they show up to vote on November 3rd. And trying to stop mail-in voting is depraved, in my opinion. This is a right that people should have if you want to avail yourself to it. It is secure, it is safe, it has been used.
Marley, is anybody trying to stop mail-in balloting entirely?
Well, I don't think so, no. In fact, even the Save America Act allows for absentee balloting that when it's requested and when it's secured and when there's a chain of custody on the ballot. Governor Hochul is famous for using emotional rhetoric and name calling to try to coerce her own supporters into, their demise, which is sad. RealAmerica.vote actually has a successful lawsuit right now in federal court in New York State against Letitia James and the New York State Board of Elections for massive election irregularities where these officials retaliated in their personal capacity against citizens just asking for those things to be corrected. So Hochul doesn't have a leg to stand on in this one, Greg.
Meanwhile, you got Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker releasing this statement after Monday's ruling by the U.S. Supreme Court. He said that, quote, "We are weeks away from voting in the midterms, and the president's trying to put fear in Americans about the security of our elections, rewrite the rules, and put the federal government between voters and their ballots. Illinois will continue to administer free and fair elections in our state while fighting every attack on voters' rights." You're hearing this rhetoric, right? The attack on voters' rights, putting fear into Americans about election integrity. What's your view on what the president's order does?
Well, the president's order just enforces the second sentence of the United States Constitution that the states have functionally abandoned. It says that the citizens, American citizens choose the members of Congress, and the states qualify every voter according to state law. A cursory look at Illinois' voter roll shows flatly that they have abandoned the practice of qualifying voters. And we can see this anecdotally in videos like what James O'Keefe has been putting up, where he actually went to Alaska and managed to get custody of Brian Murkowski's ballot, the brother of Lisa Murkowski, who, her brother actually lives in Texas. So that was kind of a hysterical video, but it proves this point, which is that the states are not qualifying voters. Anyone can get on the voter rolls. That means any individual who gets access can get a mail-in ballot. And that's not a secure election. It's so important to recognize that this attack on free and fair elections is coming from the states right now.
Marley, briefly here, what are some of the big things you see wrong with mail-in voting that needs to be shored up by states?
Yeah, the biggest problem, Greg, is what I said, that the states have abandoned the practice of qualifying voters. So if you go online and you submit a mail-in, or you submit a voter registration application, as long as you say you're qualified, the big blue states will take your word for it and add you to the list, and they will never ask you for identification, making it very, very easy to add fake names to the list and to vote in other people's names simply by asserting that you are that person. And that's not a secure process. And it's really an attack on the union, actually, the loyalty of the union itself, because there's only 535 seats in US Congress. And so every single American citizen not only has to know, but has an individual right to know that those legislators were chosen exclusively by qualified voters and American citizens.
Marley Hornick, RealAmerican.vote founder, greatly appreciate you taking the time this morning with the states. And I'm curious what you think. Should there be more restrictions on vote by mail? Or should that option be universally allowed? Comment below and be sure to follow the Center Square on social media for the latest. We'll be right back with more here from the States.